Never stare into your dog's eyes for too long, because sometimes what stares back isn't your pet. It's something ancient, wearing its skin like a disguise. Have you ever heard of Skinwalkers? Dark beings born from forbidden rituals, shapeshifters who mimic animals and sometimes people. They hide in plain sight, behind familiar faces. And what you're about to see might just change the way you look at your loyal companion forever. Brace yourself, because tonight we unveil the terrifying truth behind Tito and the unspeakable secret he hides when darkness falls. Tito used to be one of those hyperactive dogs, the kind that bolts out the door the moment it's cracked open. But there was something about him, something unsettling. He was too smart, not in a cute way, in a way that made you feel like you were being watched. Sometimes, at night, his eyes would glow just a bit too long in the dark. One day, the family decided to test something old, something more like a superstition. They poured a line of salt across the front door. At first it felt silly, but then Tito approached, and that's when the unease grew into something palpable, something you could feel crawling under your skin. He moved slowly toward the door, sniffed the salt, and froze. He didn't cross. This wasn't hesitation. It was like an invisible wall had formed right in front of him. A few seconds later, another neighborhood dog passed through that same line without a second thought. But Tito just stood there, unmoving, staring into space like the salt had exposed something he'd been hiding. The security camera caught every second of it. You could see the confusion on the family's faces as they watched the footage back, trying to rationalize it. But some things, they don't fit into explanations. The owner tried to call him, waved his favorite toy, promised a walk. Nothing. Tito's eyes were cold, blank, as if he was trying to calculate his next move. From that moment on, the fear crept into the house like a cold draft no one could block. Something wasn't right, and they all knew it. They began to avoid staring into his eyes for too long, afraid of what they might see reflected back. Every night felt heavier after that, as if the house itself was holding its breath. What happened with the salt was just the beginning. Small things began to happen. Strange things. Tito would spend long stretches of time staring at the staircase, completely still, as if something, or someone, was there. At night, the sound of footsteps echoed through the house. Heavy ones. And it wasn't Tito. It was as if the house itself had awakened, and it was no longer just theirs. The wooden floor creaked in places no one walked, and shadows seemed to shift even when the lights were steady. Each passing day, Tito seemed less and less like a dog. He avoided certain rooms, mostly the dimly lit ones, and when people looked directly into his eyes, they felt chills, like something was staring back. Something old. The scariest moment came when Tito began sitting like a human, spine straight, paws resting like arms. No dog sits like that naturally. It was eerie, wrong, disturbing, and each time they witnessed it, the fear grew stronger. They stopped inviting friends over, unwilling to explain why their dog seemed more like a person trapped in fur. That's when the question turned into dread. What was happening to Tito? Or worse, who was inside Tito? The family started avoiding him at night. They locked their doors. They placed more salt in different parts of the house, unsure if that would do anything at all. But deep down, they knew. This wasn't something salt alone could contain. Desperate, the owner tried something drastic. She poured more salt and drew a full circle around Tito. It's an ancient method, meant to repel dark energy and define a safe boundary between worlds. Tito stayed inside the circle, still, as if frozen. She offered him treats, toys, chocolate, his favorite leash. Nothing worked. Not a single paw crossed that line, and the longer he stood there, the heavier the air felt, as if time itself had thickened around them. There was something about the silence that was deeply disturbing. Tito didn't blink, didn't flinch. It was like he wasn't used to being watched that closely, like he didn't know how to pretend anymore. His eyes, once lively, had become dark wells of emptiness. Minutes passed. Finally, just as someone reached out to touch him, Tito stood up. But the way he moved, it wasn't right. His joints seemed too loose, like he was testing them, remembering how to move in that body. It felt like the body wasn't his, like something else had borrowed it and was still learning how to wear it. The family exchanged nervous glances, unsure if they should leave the salt circle or stay there, hoping it offered some kind of protection. No one dared speak the thought aloud, but it lingered in their minds. Was this really their dog anymore? The family began digging online. That's when things got darker. They found dozens of videos, dogs standing motionless for hours, others walking in tight, perfect circles until their paws wore patterns into the ground. One video showed a dog walking on two legs like a human in the middle of the night. Can you imagine seeing that with your own eyes? The comments on these videos weren't helpful. Most people laughed, called them fake, but some shared stories that felt too real. Some people spoke about shadows that didn't match the dogs' bodies. Others described eyes that glowed unnaturally bright. But most terrifying of all were the stories about a presence, a weight in the room, a sense that someone else was always watching. The legends call them skinwalkers, shapeshifters, beings that take the form of animals, sometimes even people. And salt? Salt, it turns out, is a barrier they can't cross. But once invited in, they don't leave so easily. A group of teens, drawn to these stories, decided to investigate on their own. They went to an old abandoned cemetery, a place said to be haunted by creatures like the Skinwalkers. With only flashlights and phones in hand, they filmed everything. And what they saw, it's burned into their minds. A tall figure, legs thick like tree trunks, hooves instead of feet, stared back at them from the trees. Its eyes glowed, not reflected light, but something alive. It didn't blink. It didn't move. It just watched. They began to pray. Hail Marys, protection prayers, anything they could remember. But the thing didn't leave. Worse, more eyes appeared in the distance, more shapes. They weren't alone. The footage ends with them running for their lives, the last frame showing glowing eyes across the field. Dozens of them. And in the silence after the video, you can almost hear the fear still clinging to their breath. So what was Tito really? A skinwalker? A trapped spirit? Or something worse? Something older, wearing the mask of man's best friend? No one ever found out for sure. Tito still lives in that house, but something about him, something has changed. And some nights when the lights are out and the world is quiet, his owners swear they hear whispers. Whispers that don't sound like barking. Whispers that ask, if you're awake. Now tell me, would you dare to draw a salt circle around your dog? Would you dare to spend a night where glowing eyes watch you from the dark, even when you're sure you're alone? Maybe this story is just a legend, or maybe it's a warning. Leave a comment below if you've ever felt your pet acting not quite right, or if you've ever seen something move in the shadows that shouldn't have been there. If this story chilled you to the bone, drop a like, subscribe, and ring that bell. There are many more chilling, mysterious tales waiting for you. And look, there's another story on the screen right now. Click it if you're brave enough.